It all began when Eleanor Hart, a quiet college student, came back to her grandmother's old house after the funeral. The house was silent, full of dust, and smelled of old wood. She and her cousin Michael Kane were asked to clean the attic. The attic was dark and crowded with boxes, old clothes, and broken furniture. While moving things around, Eleanor noticed something hidden under a large white sheet. She pulled the sheet away, and there it was, an old, tall mirror. Its frame was made of black wood, carved with strange shapes that looked almost alive. The glass wasn't clear like normal mirrors. It was dark, cloudy, and seemed to ripple faintly, almost like water. Michael felt uneasy the moment he saw it. He whispered, "Eleanor, leave that thing here. It doesn't look right." But Eleanor was curious. She touched the cold surface of the mirror and felt a shiver run through her arm. For some strange reason, she felt drawn to it, like it was calling her. "No. I like it," she said softly. "I'll take it to my room." Michael shook his head, uncomfortable. "This house is already creepy enough. Don't add this." But Eleanor ignored him. Together, they carried the mirror downstairs and placed it in her bedroom. That night, as she got ready for bed, Eleanor noticed something strange. The mirror looked darker than before, as if fog was moving inside it. She leaned closer, trying to see her reflection clearly. And just for a second, she thought she saw the glass breathing. A faint mist pushed against the inside, like something trapped behind it was exhaling. Eleanor stepped back quickly, her heart racing. But when she looked again, it was only her reflection staring back at her. She laughed nervously and whispered, "It's just my imagination." But deep inside she knew, this mirror wasn't normal. The next evening, Eleanor sat in front of the mirror, brushing her long brown hair. The room was quiet. Only the soft creak of her brush moving through her hair filled the silence. She looked at herself in the mirror, tired eyes, pale skin, but nothing unusual. At least, that's what she thought. As she continued brushing, something strange happened. Her reflection suddenly stopped moving. Eleanor froze. Her hand was still brushing her real hair, but in the mirror, her reflection's hand was perfectly still. Eleanor leaned closer, staring carefully. Her heart beat faster. "Maybe I'm just tired," she whispered to herself. And then the reflection smiled. Not a small, normal smile, but a wide, unnatural grin, stretching far beyond what her real face was doing. Eleanor's real mouth was still closed, but in the mirror her reflection's teeth showed dark, jagged, almost rotten-looking. Eleanor dropped her brush on the floor. The sound echoed through the quiet room. She couldn't breathe, couldn't move. The reflection's grin grew wider and wider, until it almost reached her ears. Eleanor blinked hard, and suddenly, everything was normal again. Her reflection looked exactly like her, brushing her hair as if nothing had happened. Eleanor grabbed her blanket and covered the mirror quickly. Her hands were shaking, her skin cold. She sat on the bed, hugging her knees, whispering, "It's not real. It's not real. It's just in my head." But the uneasiness wouldn't leave. Deep inside, she felt the mirror had shown her something she wasn't supposed to see. And in the corner of the room, where the covered mirror stood, she thought she heard a faint sound, a soft chuckle. The next morning, Eleanor told Michael what had happened. She expected him to laugh, but instead his face turned pale. "That's exactly why I told you to leave the mirror in the attic," he said nervously. "Something is wrong with it." Michael wasn't the type to scare easily, but the way his voice shook made Eleanor uneasy. He suggested they visit someone who might know more. That evening, they went to meet Professor Harold Vane, a local historian who studied strange artifacts. Professor Vane's office was filled with old books, dusty maps, and strange objects from the past. When Michael explained about the mirror, the professor's eyes narrowed. He asked them to describe it carefully: the black wooden frame, the strange carvings, the cloudy glass. The professor leaned back slowly in his chair. "You should not have brought it into your room," he said in a low, serious voice. Eleanor frowned. "Why? It's just a mirror." Professor Vane shook his head. "No. That mirror comes from the Blackwell estate, a mansion that burned down in the 1800s. The entire family disappeared, without a trace. The only thing left was that mirror. People said it was cursed, that it showed things that shouldn't exist. Michael leaned forward, his voice trembling. What do you mean shouldn't exist? The professor looked at Eleanor, his face grave. Reflections are supposed to copy us. But that mirror, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they act on their own. People who owned it claimed their reflections spoke to them. Some even said their reflections tried to take their place. Eleanor swallowed hard. She remembered the horrible grin from the night before. Professor Vane gave them one final warning. Whatever you do, never look into it after midnight. Eleanor nodded, but inside, curiosity burned stronger than fear. She couldn't stop thinking about what might happen if she did. That night, Eleanor couldn't sleep. The professor's words echoed in her head. Never look into it after midnight. She lay in bed, staring at the covered mirror. The silence of the house felt heavy, and every tick of the clock grew louder and louder. When the clock struck 12:03 a.m., Eleanor sat up. Her hands shook as she slowly pulled the blanket off the mirror. The glass looked darker than usual, like deep black water. She stepped closer. At first, she only saw her own reflection, tired, nervous, her eyes wide with fear. She whispered, "See? Nothing's wrong. It's just a story." But then she saw it. In the reflection, standing just behind her shoulder, was a tall, faceless figure. Its body was long and thin. Its arms stretched unnaturally low, ending in claw-like fingers. Its head was smooth, no eyes, no mouth, only pale skin. Eleanor's breath caught in her throat. Slowly, she turned around, expecting to see it in her room. But the space behind her was empty. Only the quiet air, only her bed. Her heart pounded as she looked back at the mirror. The faceless figure was still there. Only now it was closer. Right behind her reflection. Eleanor stumbled back, almost tripping over the edge of her bed. She wanted to scream, but no sound came out. Her reflection didn't move the way she did. It just stood there, frozen, with the faceless thing leaning closer and closer toward it. Then the glass rippled, as if something inside the mirror had pressed against it. Eleanor grabbed the blanket and threw it back over the mirror. She collapsed on the bed, gasping for air, her whole body trembling. The room was silent again, but Eleanor knew she wasn't alone anymore. The following day, Eleanor tried to convince herself it was just her imagination. Maybe she was tired. Maybe the late night had tricked her eyes. But strange things started happening. It began small. Her hairbrush disappeared from her desk. She searched everywhere. Under the bed, in her drawers, even in the trash. Gone. Later, her lamp vanished. One moment it was glowing on her nightstand, the next moment, only empty space remained. Michael came into the room annoyed. "Eleanor, you keep losing things. What's going on?" But then, something made both of them freeze. In the mirror's reflection, the missing objects were still there. The hairbrush sat on the desk, the lamp glowed softly, exactly where they should have been. But only in the mirror's world. Michael stepped closer, whispering, "Do you see that? They're in there." Eleanor's stomach twisted. She reached out, slowly placing her hand on the mirror's surface. It felt colder than ice. For a moment, she swore she felt something pull gently from the other side, like invisible fingers brushing against her skin. Michael yanked her back. "Don't touch it," he shouted. His voice was full of fear. They stood in silence, staring at the mirror. In its reflection, the room looked slightly darker, twisted, as if shadows were thicker on the other side. And there, right in the middle of the reflection, was something new. A chair. But neither of them owned a chair like that. It was old, wooden with claw-like legs. And sitting in that chair, for just a moment, was a figure. Pale, blurred, like smoke forming into a person. Eleanor's hand trembled as she whispered, "Michael, something's living in there." The reflection flickered, and the figure vanished. But the objects stayed. The mirror wasn't just showing them anymore. It was keeping them. Days passed, and Eleanor grew weaker. She barely slept. Every night she felt the mirror watching her. Even under the blanket. One evening she sat in front of it, staring at her own tired reflection. Her skin looked pale, her eyes heavy. She sighed and whispered, "I don't even recognize myself anymore." But then something changed. Her reflection didn't sigh. It didn't blink. It just stared back at her. Eleanor lifted her hand slowly, waving in front of the glass. Her reflection didn't move. Instead, it tilted its head slightly, like a predator studying its prey. Eleanor froze, her chest tightening. Then the reflection raised its hand on its own and waved. Eleanor stumbled back, shaking her head. "No, no, no, no," she whispered. Her reflection's lips curled into a smile. Then it leaned closer to the glass. Its mouth moved, forming a single word. "Switch." The sound wasn't in Eleanor's room. It came from inside the mirror. A soft, whispering voice, like breath against her ear. Eleanor's hands shook violently. She backed away until her spine hit the wall. Then she saw it. Her reflection pressing both hands against the glass. The surface rippled, as though it were made of liquid. A pale, cold hand pushed forward from the other side, the fingers thin and claw-like, reaching for her. Eleanor screamed and grabbed the blanket, throwing it over the mirror once again. She dropped to the floor, tears filling her eyes, gasping for air. But even under the cover, she heard it. A soft scratching sound, as if nails dragged across the inside of the glass, trying to break free. And somewhere in the darkness, her own voice whispered back at her, "Switch." The next morning, Michael found Eleanor lying on the floor, right in front of the covered mirror. Her skin was ice cold, her lips pale. For a moment, he thought she wasn't breathing. "Eleanor!" he shouted, shaking her shoulders. Her eyes snapped open suddenly. She gasped, then sat up slowly. Michael let out a sigh of relief. But as she turned her face toward him, something in his stomach twisted. Her eyes looked wrong. The color seemed darker, the whites slightly gray. And when she smiled, it was too wide, too slow, like someone pretending to be human. Michael stepped back. "Art, are you okay?" Eleanor tilted her head. Her voice was deeper, strained, almost like two voices speaking together. "I feel better." Michael froze. That didn't sound like Eleanor at all. All day he noticed strange things. She didn't eat. She sat in silence for hours, staring at the mirror even though it was covered. When she walked across the room, her reflection in the windows didn't move at the same time. It lagged, half a second behind. By nightfall, Michael's fear turned into certainty. This wasn't his cousin anymore. He ran to Professor Vane's house, breathless and terrified. The old man listened carefully, then his face turned grim. "It's not Eleanor," the professor said. "It's the mirror, Eleanor. The real one is trapped inside, and the thing you brought home is wearing her skin." Michael's hands shook. "Then how do I bring her back?" Professor Vane took out an old book, flipping through brittle pages. He whispered, "There may be a way, but it's dangerous. You'll need to confront the mirror itself before it fully claims her." Michael felt his blood run cold. Somewhere back at the house, the thing wearing Eleanor's body stood in front of the mirror, smiling at its reflection. The glass rippled softly, and from inside, the real Eleanor pounded against it, screaming for help. Michael returned to the house that night with fear in his chest. Every step up the stairs felt heavier. When he opened Eleanor's bedroom door, the air was icy cold. She was sitting on the edge of the bed, completely still, staring at the covered mirror. The blanket over it moved slightly, as if something inside was breathing. Michael whispered, "Eleanor?" Slowly, she turned her head. That same wide, unnatural smile stretched across her face. Her voice was low, broken, like it came from somewhere far away. "Why do you keep calling me that?" Michael's skin crawled. He forced a shaky smile. "Because that's who you are." She tilted her head again, blinking too slowly, like she was learning how to copy human behavior. Michael noticed something else. Her shadow on the floor wasn't right. It stretched too long, curling toward the mirror instead of the wall. That night, Michael tried to test her. He offered her food, but she only pushed it away. When he spoke to her, her reflection in the window didn't move at the same time. Sometimes, it didn't move at all. It just grinned. By midnight, Michael made a decision. He couldn't keep pretending this was Eleanor. Whatever had come through the mirror was only using her body. So he grabbed the old attic lock and chain, and while she sat still in that terrifying smile, he locked her inside the bedroom. The heavy chain rattled as he sealed the door. From inside, she didn't scream. She didn't shout. She only started laughing softly, the sound echoing through the wooden walls. But what froze Michael's blood wasn't the laugh. It was what came after. A second voice. From inside the mirror, he heard Eleanor's real voice, weak, broken, and crying for help. "Michael, please let me out." The laugh and the cry mixed together, filling the house with a sound no human should ever hear. Michael sank to the floor, clutching his head. He knew now time was running out. Michael wasted no time. At dawn, he rushed back to Professor Vane's house, begging him for help. The professor listened carefully, his face pale but determined. "There is only one way," Professor Vane said, pulling an old leather book from his shelf. "We must trap the spirit back inside the mirror before it fully claims your cousin's soul. But the ritual is dangerous. If we fail, both of you may be lost." Michael nodded without hesitation. "I'll do anything. Just save Eleanor." That night, they returned to the house. The air felt heavier than ever, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Together, they dragged the mirror to the center of the attic. Professor Vane poured salt in a wide circle around it and lit black candles at each corner. Michael's hands shook as he chained the bedroom door shut. Behind it, the thing wearing Eleanor's body began pounding on the wood. "Michael!" Her voice called sweetly, but it was not her. "Let me out. I'm so cold." He swallowed hard, refusing to answer. The ritual began. Professor Vane chanted in a strange, ancient language. The candles flickered violently, the salt circle glowed faintly. Suddenly, the blanket over the mirror flew off on its own. The glass shimmered like liquid, and Eleanor's reflection slammed against it from the inside. Her real face, pale, terrified, screaming. Michael cried out, "Eleanor!" He ran to the glass, pressing his palms against hers through the icy surface. But behind her reflection, another figure moved. Tall, faceless. Its clawed hands reached out, pulling her back deeper into the darkness. The professor shouted, "Hold on to her. Do not break contact." Michael screamed with all his strength, pressing harder against the glass as the mirror shook violently. The room filled with whispers, thousands of voices chanting in unison. The thing inside clawed at the surface, shrieking like metal tearing apart. The glass began to crack. For one horrifying moment, Michael thought the mirror would shatter completely and release whatever was trapped inside into their world. The attic shook as if a storm was raging inside the walls. Michael screamed, holding on to Eleanor's hands through the glass. Her real eyes, full of fear, stared back at him. Professor Vane's chanting grew louder, faster. The salt circle glowed like fire, and the mirror shrieked with an ear-piercing sound. Then, with a blinding flash of light, silence. The attic went still. The candles burned low. The mirror stopped moving. Michael collapsed to the floor, gasping for air. When he looked up, Eleanor was lying beside him. She was weak, trembling, but alive. Her real face. Her real voice. "Michael," she whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. "You saved me." Michael pulled her into a hug, relief flooding through his body. For the first time in days, he allowed himself to believe it was over. The evil was gone. His cousin was safe. But then, as he held her tightly, his eyes drifted to the mirror. And what he saw made his heart stop. In the reflection, two Eleanors stood. One sat in Michael's arms, pale and crying. The other stood behind them, her face twisted into a wide, unnatural grin. Her eyes dark, her teeth jagged. She raised a finger to her lips and whispered silently through the glass, "Shoo." Michael's stomach dropped. He looked back down at the Eleanor he was holding. She was warm, real, alive. But when he looked again at the mirror, the second Eleanor was still there, smiling wider, pressing her palms against the glass. And then the reflection began to laugh, soft, broken, echoing faintly inside the attic. Michael froze in terror. He realized the truth. They hadn't destroyed the evil. They had only set it free.